Welcome to CityWorks, a co-production of the City University of New York School of Labor and Urban Studies and CUNY TV. I'm Laura Flanders. Each month, CityWorks explores the challenges and lived experiences of working people on the job, also at home and in our communities. On this episode of CityWorks, we are taking to the seas. Maritime work has long held the promise of an exciting career with adventure, challenge, and reward. But a number of factors, including the pandemic, have left the United States with a critical shortage of merchant mariners. The labor crunch has hit all maritime sectors, from barging and towing to passenger vehicles, shipyards, deep-sea vessels, and offshore service vessels. Some maritime training academies also report having a hard time recruiting teachers and not even filling their classes with students. Safety standards on the seas also appear to be losing ground. Maritime labor unions are sounding the alarm against corporate profiteering in the wake of 2024's cargo ship crash into the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. The Marine Engineers Beneficial Association, MEBA, warns of the dangers of larger and larger vessels and shrinking crews, claiming that ships from overseas are, quote, not up to the standards required in the U.S. Joining us today is Roland Rexa, Secretary-Treasurer of MEBA, the oldest maritime trade union in the U.S., and Captain Joseph Ahlstrom, a professor at SUNY Maritime College. He's a former merchant ship captain and captain in the U.S. Navy Reserve, as well as a commissioner for the New York State Pilots Board. Rex, Captain Ahlstrom, welcome to CityWorks. I'm glad to have you. And before we get to the fun and adventure of maritime labor, let's just start with what we're talking about and why it matters to an average person watching this or listening to this program. Rex.
Well, I think people don't realize how their goods come to their home. 90% of the U.S. goods are delivered on ships. So if you don't have a maritime industry to be able to supply those goods, whether it's your iPhone or the things you rely on, when you make that order, you order from Amazon, those things come on vessels. Those vessels come from wherever, but they come onto our ships or international ships, come into American ports, and then delivered to your house. Without that, just as we saw in the pandemic, there could be real issues, and then that supply chain is critical in how this nation operates.
And Captain Ahlstrom, do you find your students come into this for the adventure and excitement, or are there other reasons?
Well, we do have most of them come, for the adventure, but there is a very good salary to be made. There's good job opportunities in the maritime industry. A lot of our graduates, they go to sea for a few years and then they come ashore and they work as lawyers or in areas that support the maritime industry. But many of them stay at sea for their entire careers. A lot go into the military. So again, there's great opportunity at these schools. If you go them, you get a bachelor's degree, you get a third mate, a third engineer's license, and you go out and you can work inshore and offshore. And as Rex pointed out, there is a shortage, there is a demand for these people. And even at the lower levels, people as deckhands and working as ABs or oilers, we saw that on the Staten Island Ferry. We've seen that in the industry on NYC ferries. We've seen it on tugboats. Again, there's an opportunity here, and we're trying to get our young people energized to get involved with it. I don't think they know about it. They're not going to graduate and make $1 million the first day, but they're certainly going to make a good living. They can take care of their families, and they can have a career.
People did get more conscious, I think, as you mentioned, during the COVID pandemic and afterwards, when we saw both the interruptions in the supply chains and then that huge sort of pile up at the ports with container ships needing workers to help get those goods offloaded and needing maritime workers to bring the materials from around the planet. Have things more or less kind of smoothed out, Rex?
I think, like Laura, when I joined this industry, I joined for the same reasons that Captain Joe said. I wanted the adventure. I traveled the world. I was a young kid who wanted to see the world and make good money doing so. And that opportunity is still there. I think we're slowly coming out of that. But I think the adventure part of the job has changed. It's become a business. The business now is moving in and out of ports. You're dropping cargo off. You're not getting the time, the experience to go see the world like you used to. I think there's opportunity still. This is I call it a purple collar job. It's blue collar job with white collar wages. And I think it's an opportunity for people to really get in and make a really good living and take themselves out of in some cases, abject poverty.
Now, a whole lot of maritime workers in New York are making a better living than they were a few years ago, thanks to the extraordinary success that you all finally had after, 13 years with no contract at the
13
Staten
years,
Island
yes.
Ferry? And just remind people, the Staten Island Ferry, Manhattan, connected to Staten Island through a ferry service, first and foremost.
Yeah, so Staten Island Ferry is a commuter service that operates between the island of Staten Island and Lower Manhattan. Carries around 24 million passengers a year in pre-pandemic, and we're clawing back up to those numbers post-pandemic. But our members, we represent the officers, the captains, the engineers, the assistant captains, the mates, and the marine engineers. They were out of contract for 13 years. It was mayor after mayor who really just avoided handling this contract. And I think we were finally able to settle last year with Mayor Adams, with help from others in the administration. But in settling this contract, it was these people were due this money. It was a lot of money, but it was 13 years of retroactive back pay they received.
Oh, go on, give us the details. It's sort of sexy.
It was, the fight was. I can tell you this: I lost a lot of sleep and a lot of weight fighting this contract. We had members who, when they first came out of contract, their kids were in grade school, and by the time they received the final contract, their kids had just finished college. We had a lot of members who put themselves in debt to cover the cost of living in New York, which kept rising, and they stayed out without a negotiated increase for 13 years. When we finally settled it, we had, I think it was over 40 members who received north of $1 million. But it was in total about 170 people whose lives changed for the positive. When you have that much responsibility, we talk about the 3 Ps in our industry. It's people, property, and pollution, in that order. People are the most important cargo that you can carry. And when we look at this job, or what we do every day, we're carrying the most expensive cargo in the world. And I hate to call people cargo, but that's the way you look at them in this thing. And there's no price you can put on a person's life. And I think that was being lost by some of the people making those decisions.
Well, so let's move on. You just raised the 3 Ps: people, products, and pollution.
Property and pollution.
Property and pollution. I go right to Baltimore.
Yep.
And what happened there. I mean, all of us looked in horror as that Francis Scott Key Bridge just collapsed in Baltimore after having been hit by an enormous cargo vessel. What happened there as you understood it?
Well, the NTSB has already done an investigation on that, and the NTSB being the National Safety Transit Board, or the National Transportation Safety Board, in their investigation of this, they found that safeties were bypassed. So there was mechanical issues on the vessel. The company knew of these mechanical issues, and I feel I have a lot of sympathy for the crew, for the captain and the chief engineer. Here in the United States Merchant Marine, when there's an issue on a vessel, I can report to my whistleblower, which is the Coast Guard, and say, hey, there's an issue here. And I can go to my union and have the support of my union. A lot of these mariners, they come from India, or in some cases even places where there's no labor standards, and they don't have the ability to run to someone and say this, because they'll be blackballed from their ships, they'll never get a job again. So a lot of them feel obligated to essentially run this vessel unsafely. And in this case, they were bypassing safeties. They lost power before they left the slip, and then upon leaving, they say the moment if that vessel stays in the port, it just costs millions of dollars every day it stays in the port. So the company pressured them to leave and hopefully resolve a lot of these issues at sea where there's nothing around. And a horrific accident happened that killed six construction workers and damaged billions of dollars.
So, Captain Nordstrom, is this one and done? It was a horrible thing. It was, in violation.
Rick brought up a couple of points. One of the things that we know from the NTSB report, it's public knowledge, is that vessel had breakdowns prior to departure. But due to the fact that these companies are on a time basis, as Rex pointed out, he wants it out, he wants it into the next port, that captain did not report it to the Classification Society or to the U.S. Coast Guard as required by international law. They got on the way, and even if they had reported it and the Coast Guard gave them a permit to proceed, they should have used tugboats to escort them. I have had a permit to proceed in Singapore where I went around to Zembawang, but I had only one engine and I had a 2-engine ship. So what happened is I requested a tug escort and they gave it to me. So when that vessel lost power prior to hitting the Francis Scott Key Bridge, the tugboat could have prevented them from hitting it. However, the Coast Guard, nobody knew about the situation. Now, the tractor tugs that we use to turn the ship around in Baltimore again, there's very few of them. And again, we're looking at a situation which maybe we need more of them. And those tugs, escorting them out is not necessary if the vessel has all the bells and whistles it needs. But if it doesn't, absolutely, either that vessel has to stay to the dock and the company's got to suck up that money until they find the cause for why they lost power, or they need a tug escort.
We're going to pick up this conversation right after a short break. This is CityWorks. Welcome back to CityWorks. We're talking about the future of maritime work here in New York and across the nation. Coming back to you, Rex, your organization, MEBA, talk about how you were founded and why, and whether the reasons that you were founded are any less serious today.
Well, we were founded 150 years ago.
Congratulations.
Which we're celebrating our 150th anniversary, February 23rd this year. But we were founded 150 years ago on the basis of bringing safety standards to vessels that were operating in the Great Lakes. A couple of associations, small little groups of engineers got together and they convened in Cleveland, Ohio in 1875 and decided that they wanted to create a standard, national standard for how maritime work would happen around the country. And in doing so, lobbied Congress and really set the path forward for a lot of the safety standards that are in the industry today.
All right, so now we're in good shape. I mean, we were just talking about the Baltimore ship disaster, the destruction of the bridge. Both of you talked about how there were failures and things that shouldn't have happened. They shouldn't have happened. So do we just move on?
Well, I think there are issues. Right now, the United States moves 2% of its own cargo, of the world's cargo, and 98. Most of it's moved by China and other foreign nations. We have a thing called flag convenience. A flag convenience is a vessel that's flagged in a country that has no industrial base, but gives tax breaks to these companies.
Yeah, it took us a while to figure out who that ship even belonged to.
Exactly. So they're flagged and it's owned by someone else and flagged over to someone else. And those standards for those ships are well below standards of any nation. We have international standards that the IMO sets, with the International Maritime Organization sets. These are below standard for those organizations.
So what proportion again did you say?
Right now we represent 2. If you want to, I use China as the example. Right now China has over 5,500 ships where United States that travel internationally. U.S. has less than 200.
All right, so Captain Ahlstrom, 98% of shipping is not really adhering to the same rules that we have. Is that fair to say? What should be done about this?
I don't think that's fair to say that they don't compare. Again, on paper, they have to. They have SOLAS regulations. They have STCW. They do comply with it. However, as Rex pointed out, I sit here on Staten Island. I could see the harbor. And going into Verrazano, there's no U.S. flag ships coming in, very few. And that's because we have outsourced our maritime industry. And certainly the operator of the vessel, the owner of the vessel, it becomes a chess game. And these people that they bring on board, unlike U.S. seamen, again, as Rex has pointed out, they come from underdeveloped countries where their whole life is that ship. So they'll do whatever it takes to keep their job. And we saw that, again, unfortunately, in a lot of incidents in Korea and here in Baltimore, where these captains make decisions to get these vessels on the way when they shouldn't. I would never get a vessel on the way, but I have no problem. I'll come home and I'll get another job. These people, when they don't do that, that could be the end of their career.
All right, so we have a new president who has been talking about Chinese meddling in shipping with respect to the Panama Canal. I think as Jimmy Carter, who negotiated the Panama Canal Treaty, was lying in state at the National Cathedral, Donald Trump prior to his inauguration, was saying the worst thing Jimmy Carter ever did was negotiate that. Now it's being run by the Chinese. This is a terrible threat to security. Is it? Is this an important issue? Could this change things?
I think there's some issues on our own shores that we should be looking at. And I think the issues we should be looking at our own shores is our inability to actually supply ourselves. I think the pandemic highlighted a lot of the issues that our industry has. When you have a farmer in Iowa who needs his cargo, his grain, to move to, just say, South America, and a foreign shipping company can say, well, it's more lucrative for me to move an empty container back to China and bring goods back from China than it is to move the farm goods. I think we have a problem as a nation.
Can we solve it?
I think so. I think this is Ships for America Act. Right now, Mark Kelly and Senator Young, a bipartisan bill that is trying to revitalize our industry. It's essentially throwing a lot of ideas that we have to reestablish this maritime industry. I don't think we've had a national maritime policy since 1970. So this is an opportunity for us to really reestablish ourselves as a maritime superpower.
So what kind of new ideas?
There's ideas, there's things that I've been pushing for on that bill are tax incentive for mariners, making a federal tax, essentially tax-free federal tax for mariners who work on international shipping. We're working for shipper tax incentives where if you're a box retailer like Amazon, if you use an American ship instead of a foreign ship, you get a double tax credit for using American. And by doing that, we always talk about made American, buy American. What about ship American?
Ship America. And what about this idea of short sea shipping?
Short sea shipping has been on the block for a long time.
Tell us what it is.
And what short sea shipping is, it's the final mile of shipping. So here you are, a container comes into the port, and you live in Queens, just say, and the port is in New Jersey. Well, how does it get from New Jersey to Queens? Well, historically, the way it got in was a truck would pick it up and it would drive it through. Obviously, with all the issues with congestion pricing in New York City and all the issues when we're seeing all these trucks on the road, another way to solve this, and we have this natural, I call it water highway, that's been there for a very long time, that if you look back 70, 80 years ago, this harbor was full of vessels. So how do we move that cargo? We can move it onto vessels and move it into stations in Queens, in the Bronx, and other places in the city, and get those trucks off the road.
All right, so the Ships for America Act, Captain Ahlstrom, or reclaiming the Panama Canal, what's more important?
I got a bunch of things here that I was writing down. First off, I want to mention that SUNY Maritime in the Bronx is celebrating 150 years last year.
All right, so you're competing, I can tell here. All right, go for it.
Get that one in. Now, the Ships for America Act is my number one concern. All right, let's get to that. We're looking at a situation where we're building 80 ships, which is not going to make, it's going to be a dent, but it's a start. Now, if we're going to build these ships in the United States, we don't have the infrastructure to support that. The welders, all these people, these ship designers, they've all gone to other professions because we don't do that here anymore. So we need to bring that back. Look at the offshore wind situation. Who was operating the survey boats and the cable layers? These are all Danish and ships coming in from Europe to do the work right here in Long Island Sound and off of New York Harbor and up the Hudson River. Why aren't American ships doing that?
Yeah.
Short sea shipping is very important. If not for giving us jobs for the industry, it's to get the trucks off the road, for crying out loud. How much money do we waste in redoing these roads? How much time are you stuck in traffic by some tractor trailer? Why not have it go by water instead of by road?
One of the P's stood for pollution. How does shipping compare to trucking with respect to the green energy program that we all want to be on?
Shipping is a lot more energy efficient, obviously. I mean, the ships are larger, but since they carry so much more cargo, it's actually, so for every one ship, it's thousands of trucks. So think of taking thousands of trucks off the road and putting one ship to carry some of this cargo. That's why shipping makes more sense on a green standard. And with new technology coming in, our shipping industry is required by law to reach certain standards by 2050, right? I'm sure, Captain Joe, you can put forth.
We're looking at, but first and foremost, that's what our motto is in SUNY Maritime, first and foremost. However, short sea shipping has taken off in Europe and in Asia. We do not use it. We're due to the interstate acts that Eisenhower did with all the roads, we're a nation that lives by the road. But we've got to get away from that mentality, especially for moving commerce. It's nice to have a car and the mobility, but for a truck, certainly getting it off the road onto a barge to move it through short sea shipping is very important. And I think it's going to help us and regenerate our economy. This is areas that we can certainly agree on. And there are a lot of issues that we're not going to agree on, but this, I believe, is one that we can. And where are we going to get the mates and the engineers and the captains for those tugboats? Same place. So, like I said, people, when I was talking, Rex, I went to sea 2 or 3 years. I thought I'd go to sea 2 or 3 years for the adventure, build up some money, go back to graduate school. But again, I stayed out for 15 years until I got married. And then I came to SUNY Maritime. But the fact is that these people now will have an option. Okay, I've gone to sea for a certain while of time. Maybe I'll work closer to home. You know, people have that opportunity all the time in other industries and other professions. But we don't seem to have that here. Pick up short sea shipping, get them on that area, and I think we're going to have a better future.
Well, talk a bit about the demographics. I know when it comes to trucking, they've had a really hard time appealing, especially to women truck drivers who have the burden of the responsibilities of home, the majority still of the burden, and don't want to go on those long commitments, those long drives. What about the demographics right now in shipping? Do you see a lot of women? Do you see a lot of young people? You two white guys, is it a mixed workforce?
We have plenty of women in our college right now that are going to SUNY Maritime. We have more and more each year coming in. We have women's sports. We try to make their lives comfortable. They go to sea. They do fine. Tugboat inshore industry has accepted them. I know plenty of female captains and chief engineers, as does Rex, I'm sure, in his union. Again, it is a profession that's wide open for women. It's a great opportunity for them if they want to follow it. And, trucking is tough. I have a nephew that's a Teamster. Yeah, taking a truck all the way across country and back is a little difficult. But again, the truck stops are not the best. And we could get into that, but that's a whole other issue.
I think
The fact is that going to sea is a good lifestyle, and it's built in. They don't have to worry about it.
The culture's not as macho as trucking?
I think historically, I think we had a male-dominated industry, just like most blue-collar work was male-dominated industries. I think that's changed. I think we've had a massive change towards becoming more inclusive when it comes to people of color, when it comes to women. I think there's so much opportunities, and I think I am a white male, but I think
And you grew up amongst all of this, right?
But I'm first generation. My parents were Albanian immigrants. I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood, and this industry offered me opportunity to get out of that neighborhood. Yeah. And it doesn't really matter what color you are. Our contracts, at least in our union, our contracts are colorblind. They it doesn't change your wages based on if you're a woman or you're a man, or if you're a person of color or not. So that's the importance of having a labor union that's really going to fight for you to make sure, hey, everyone is treated on a fair play.
Hey, there's a lot of women want adventure on the high seas. Sounds good to me. Escape, all the rest of it. What are you seeing in terms of the future, Captain? What would be your vision of the future of this industry and of our relationship as Americans to shipping?
I think there's a very bright future. And I think one of the things that the United States is starting to do, which I'm very happy to see, is the same as in Europe and Asia, where officers and people that work at sea are starting to get respected. I was the first generation to go to sea for my family. No, and then when I said I'm going to SUNY Maritime, they were like, why don't you become a doctor or a lawyer or something else? And I want to travel. And certainly doing that and then finding a great profession where I got a bachelor's degree, I went on and got a master's. We have people teaching in our school that went to sea that have doctorates. It's a very respected profession now. It's not, again, something you should be ashamed of. And quite frankly, as Rex pointed out, I see more minorities in our school. I see more people coming from other areas, even white males from other areas that I would never have expected. It was always Long Island or people that were close to the water. Now we're starting to see people from upstate New York, people from the middle America that are finding out that this is a good profession. And certainly we want to see that. We want to see people go in. I can strongly say that due to the efforts of people like Rex, and thank you, Rex, we're starting to see wonderful wages out there. We're starting to see people. And the other thing is the time off you have. I mean, think about that. You go to sea for a little while. You have time to spend with your family, to really get to know them, which if you're working 9 to 5 and you come home, it's dark, and you go to work, it's dark. I mean, what is that? I mean, we have an opportunity here with that time off to really enjoy something, hike the Appalachians if you're single, go skiing out in Colorado for 3 weeks if you want. It's all available to you. And again, Wall Street Journal once said the biggest commodity in the United States today is free time. These people that go to sea, they do have free time.
You obviously loved it.
I did. It's funny. That's why I teach it. I mean, when I came to sea, my wife was like, I need you to be home. So I was like, okay. So I found something that I could do that was related to going to sea, and that was teaching.
And what about you, Rex? You've loved it.
I loved it. By coming out of school, when I graduated United States Merchant Marine Academy, and I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to college. Like most kids, just can't figure it out. And I chose to be an engineer. I was like, I like working with my hands. And I picked a job, essentially picked a profession. And what's great about going to one of these academies, there's 7 service academies, state schools around the country, and there's 1 federal service academy. But what's great about it is it's guaranteed that you're gonna get a job. If you can graduate the school, you get your license, your diploma is one thing, but your license is actually more valuable than that diploma. And having that license, getting onto a vessel, and as a young kid, as a 21-year-old, I've been all over Africa, I've been all over Asia, I've been to the Persian Gulf twice, I've been all over Europe. It's an opportunity to see the world with a different lens. You get the real, you don't go to the nicest places, but you're going to places, and you're getting to see things that honestly you'll never see if you just stayed home and didn't get off your couch. So,
all right. Well, thank you both, Roland, Rex, Captain Ahlstrom. It's been fabulous talking to you. I've learned a lot. That is it for CityWorks this time. If you have questions or comments, don't forget you can write to us at cityworks@slu.cuny.edu, and be sure to download the CUNY TV app, where you can watch this show and all of CUNY TV's programming right on your smartphone. For CityWorks, I'm Laura Flanders. Thanks for watching.